So pre-retirement programs and understanding what we have to do. That doesn't finish after retirement. It's also a way how you empower people to take their decisions, to be able to move on before retirement plan is a recruitment chapter of their life. And these programs are creating opportunity. What is known
but then more effort looking at how do we put citizens at the heart of what we do.
Thank you. And it's very clear. It has to be done by design.
And again, I would just elaborate, it needs to be delivered, it needs to be planned, it needs to be structured on the, look at our reports, you will see, 30 to 35 self-referral, and the rest is all referrals from either the police or the judicial departments or the health. And this, if anything, tells you that our prevention programs need to work further and to be more effective. Because again, as we said, if it reached already the police and the judicial departments, then we didn't do our job as it's supposed to be. And now we are on the reactive mode. We want to activate, being proactive, and that cannot happen through FCA only. Because again, prevention is cross-sectorial. It starts from the scratch, like the schools where children need to know what is right and wrong, where should they escalate, who they're supposed to talk to, and then even when we talk about families, positive parenting, positive partnerships and stuff like that, and how to raise your children, and then we go and talk to the public, telling the public what is their laws, what are the rights, how can they escalate, what are the channels that they can channel their concern, not necessarily a complaint or a crime, but just a concern, reach out to support. So through FCA, counseling, programs, activities that are happening in order to prevent as much as possible, this problem to become a complex problem. That's what we're trying to do. Now, FCA in particular, I mentioned now we're talking at least 4 or 5 partners that we are working with. And fortunately, our delivery model for our services does entail having those partners part of that model. So without having the judicial department, the police, the health, and the education, our services will be always very ineffective and very limited. Having all of these partners around us through proper SLAs, through a process that is identifying who's supposed to act when, because we wanted that beneficiary when they arrive to FCA door knows exactly what's going to happen, how long will it take, what partners are being involved in order to get to the solution, and that intervention is extremely important.
Absolutely. And there's one thing which we've always seen in our experiences, lots of reference coming from health, justice sector. One problem when most policymakers work in different sectors feel is that, of course, as individuals we work together, as a master plan, we make sure that our work is aligned together. But information barriers, data sharing, and of course it's not because people are saying they own the data and they don't want to share the data sectors, but sometimes it's the fact that there isn't one clear policy, how much data you can share, there are concerns about privacy, confidentiality, we're all dealing with sensitive information. So what's being done to actually bring that, what is the current policy thinking around data sharing across sectors? Of course, looking at our engineer.
Thank you very much. Actually, in this particular area, I'm sure that this challenge regarding data sharing is not only it's a worldwide. We have been attending so many conferences worldwide, and we all share the same thing when it comes to data, especially in the social sector, because we're dealing with sensitive data. Abu Dhabi government has embarked on a very key initiative a few years ago. It's called the Data Innovation Program, in which they have established a link to link between all government entities to have the data in one platform. For different reasons, of course, starting with the streamlining and the data exchange between the entities, expediting it, ensuring the highest level of quality assurance, and enable the capabilities within the entities. So we do have that, but we are at the early phases of sharing aggregate level of data, high level figures, and still the entities are not willing to share because of their own restrictions, and like the ECHO
that expenses surrounding it, for example, sharing information and technology, sharing work from companies. It's always we are there. It's a journey, and we are trying to change the culture around that. The government realized this, and we have established some good remarkable milestones in terms of sharing that.
Looking forward to that era of proper data sharing agreements, and because I think everybody's working in these sectors realizing the need for a common digital care record rather than a social care record. And everybody wants to share, but it's just do we have the permission, and are we actually maintaining the trust of our clients in doing that? So that's a policy area direction. I think every government is looking at that, and actually have examples about Singapore.
I think for Singapore, we face a couple of challenges. One is, as I shared, our ministry works very closely with the non-government sector. So one of the things that we are trying to do is how do we share client data, for example, with non-government entities. And what you said about privacy, things we have to navigate and overcome so that we allow better data sharing. The other consideration is actually data security. As you know, cyber threats are increasing every day, and we have a much larger scope of data sharing. The threats increases as well. So we want to preserve trust in the system. How do we equip our partners with the right cyber security practices, measures to ensure data sharing? So I think these are very practical things. I think that concept, no one can disagree with. How do you execute? How do you ensure all the systems are in place? And these are really challenges that we have. So I do think that this is something that we are thinking very hard, working very hard on, and certainly we shape further ideas and discussions on this. And many governments are working through this. The other point I wanted to link back is just the session before we talked about AI, and I fully believe that that has the power to actually transform a lot of things. One is a lot of our data is not as clean as it should be because capturing of data is actually very onerous for professionals. Like case notes, agencies require them to fill in a lot of fields of data, actually, so actually we can visualize a lot of this, document that. It makes it much easier, it gives us a lot more data to use when we actually support our clients. So I think the power of AI has the potential that speech and text technology, for example, has allowed the potential to actually reduce a lot of the time that our caseworkers spend capturing a lot of data. And of course, harnessing the value of text data through large language models as well. That is also another potential. So I believe I think the session before this sharing is very rich, and certainly a lot of potential. I see game-changing potential to actually enhance the way our social workers work. We allow them to actually spend their time on the most important interactions with clients.
Well said. I think that AI would definitely solve problems around what we have, legacy records, data standardization, needing data to be very structured before the AI time for it to integrate that bit. And personalization, Dr. Hillary was talking earlier about more and more care working with personalized solutioning. So AI does enable that. And all of those things would be potentially what we're talking about maybe even next year when we sit in this forum, that might be along the way things are changing so fast. So it brings me to the question, and I'm sure you're all grappling with right now. This is the AI world, not a conversation, not a meeting, nothing without data. So how, and you are, as you mentioned, you are dealing with very sensitive data, you're also dealing with the trust of your clients. So what is the policy thinking, how to modeling, what are the big questions, and maybe you look for all the answers, frameworks, what are you thinking about in terms of this? Love to hear that.
So basically, what we are doing is obviously important that you get the trust of the clients. So, for example, this morning when I gave a presentation on the telecommunication service that we are enacting in Malta, for example, we gave the possibility and flexibility and giving the information about what this tracking device is providing. Obviously, you're tracking someone, so it is a concern for this data. And so, for example, we explained how the benefits of this device, and also give them possibilities. For example, example, instead of, for example, the data going to a call center that can help you, you can also send the data to the relative of your trust. So we give them this choice and see to go around a bit how they wish their data to be shared. And giving the key to people breaks this barrier, because if you go there and tell them, listen, we have this, and sign this, like renting a car, or we have a and just that will not really get you the trust that is needed. So this is the way we tackle it. That you explain. It doesn't mean that you close the agreement on the first encounter, but you continue to explain the benefits, and if you want how to treat it, the service. So this is how one way how we tackle it. And also between governments, what we do is, for example, we are providing 30 community services. Because the person has mobility issues, we provide transport, night shelters, we provide residential day centers, nursing at home, caring at home, so all these services under one roof. One data base, so sharing is within the entity, and you also can do a case management. So we have shared data, and we also, like I said, employ social workers, for example, from the social policies. We usually take care of the units. But one central database, so that you can share this data, and if there is an issue that a nurse has raised that this person is not eating properly, we can provide the means of peace. So there's a case management approach and discussion with data that is being shared centrally between the different units. So this is one way how you try to avoid working in silos. And issues that you want to mention, that you have to get all this permission from different entities. This is one way of how we mention.
Thank you, very insightful. So you're saying integrating delivery and data follows that, definitely, and then you also talked about not shying away from having these conversations. Sometimes we almost assume people will have challenges and issues, and we might be surprised people might not actually the information to be shared to get better and coordinated care.
Yes, I just wanted to elaborate and give the perspective of Abu Dhabi and United Arab Emirates. I think there is a very serious move when it comes to AI on the government, and maybe you've heard the news about our collaboration with international entities in order to be leading on the AI specifically. Yet when it comes to the level of the social sector, the biggest evidence that AI is extremely important and data is extremely important is having Dr. Arif with us here today leading that effort and activities at the level of PCD. So today, data integration, data management, and then AI, this is how you build basically your AI. And in FCA, particularly, we have the case management where we have the 360 view of our beneficiary. And that's stage one. Stage two is that we are expanding to other social entities on the other DCD and connect with them. And then from there we go to our partners on the ecosystem in order to connect. Maybe 5 years ahead, we come here and talk about how we are integrated and we're using that case management across service providers, but there is a plan, and we're at the early stage of that plan, but hopefully within the coming 5 years, we'll be getting on that plan.
Hopefully even earlier than that, the way it's going. A very nice input that you are actually building that based on the use case. That as you need to deliver care, you're coming to that. And then that makes sense to service to see that the beneficiaries so they understand why the information is being shared rather than just complaining and really sharing. We do have another session, so I wanted to have this time. And it's a bit of a round robin. I'm going to go around to each one of you. I want to understand from your perspective and get your view on in your sector, maybe in your state, in your country, what is the one big policy shift in social care, or even forget about social care, in the second across the government that's going to make an impact, or is already making an impact, and how we provide social care, how we do provide social support, or even beyond how do we actually grow as a society. So, Your Excellency, Sheikh, let me start with you. I think this one's timed.
I think one of the key reform, policy reform, or governance reforms that I would like to share here about Abu Dhabi government is having the human centricity at the top level of the decision making. How we have achieved that? So, for example, our chairman, the chairman of the Department of Community Development, is also the chairman of one of the supreme decision-making committees at the level of the Executive Council. So he's heading the Quality of Life Committee, and which he has in this representatives from municipalities, health department, education, and early childhood authority, you name it. So in this statement, they meet together and discuss different policies and strategies across other sectors, be it economic, energy, health, environment, and how they impact the well-being of the community. So at that top level, and today when they introduced the Abu Dhabi Government Excellence Award, they have made the human centricity as the highest criteria in your submission and in your evaluation. So this is how they're gonna evaluate the entities in terms of their impact on human centricity and the well-being. So this is something, and also all the policies and the strategies that the government takes, it does not get endorsed until they do the stakeholders engagement with all sectors. So as we speak, sometimes we see proposals regarding the revisiting of the tariff, the modern electricity, for example, what impact it will have on the community. Tourism plan, economic plan, what impact it will have on the cost of living, the community. So nothing will get endorsed until all the stakeholders are agreeing on the final outcome, which is the individual and the community well-being.
Thank you. Dr. Red, what's happening in Malta?
So basically, what has happened now that we have the health ministry and the ministry for activation, which have now merged, and now under one roof. So that's as well, this collaboration and this, because we obviously need to look at the person in a holistic manner. And the next step is that we are now going to go on mainstream engagement, which is also a topic that is now being addressed, by also involving the social policy ministry, so the social workers. So we're doing an inter-ministerial committee that now is involving aging, health, social policy, and eventually also education with lifelong learning and upskilling people so that they are prepared for the journey of life. So this is a way how we are putting into effect, breaking the silos between ministries by having created this interministerial committee on mainstream engagement, so that we can work in a better manner, have more coordination, see the impacts that certain measures are being done by the other ministry, how is going to impact the other ministries, because it is obviously a chain. So if one part of the chain is broken, you will have a broken service, and the client, the citizen, that is not interested in which ministry is delivering his needs, but is interested in the service. So this is a way how we are coordinating better the fusion of the two ministries, and this interministerial committee that is now working so that the impacts of the different measures and the impacts of certain implementation of measures that are planned by the government will impact different ministries.
I can see that the time is finished, so I'm very, very brief. There are a lot of things happening in Abu Dhabi, but I'll highlight something that is very close to my heart, which is child protection law. And how just last week we had, a call for update or amendments to that law. And I just wanted to highlight that this law took it from a policy level until execution
one of the areas that we're quite deeply involved in Singapore is really the investments into early childhood and preschool. And I think what just to share over the last 10 years, I think government has increased its investments significantly in preschool in Singapore. And I think this is for a few reasons. One is we wanted to really support our women better, empowering women to balance their family aspirations with the aspirations for pursuing a career. Secondly, it's about social mobility. We wanted to invest early so that children from less advantaged backgrounds have a fair shot in life as well. And I think thirdly, the immense power of potential, like investing early, really can harness. And Singapore has natural resources to really harness the capability of every individual in Singapore. So we have really put heavy investments in preschool. We set up the new agency. I was very fortunate to be part of that setup. And over the last 10 years, I think we've done a few things. We've brought the cost of preschool to everything down for parents. It's much more affordable. We've raised the quality and also the salaries of preschool teachers. So it's now more attractive to be a preschool teacher, much more, it's much more pride in profession as well. And certainly, I think for parents, much more convenient options and accessible options to the home. So I wanted to share this because I thought this whole idea of the forum of having future-ready care, I think we start today, and all of societies are changing socially, social structures and things over years. I believe that thinking forward, planning forward, and taking action, as we talked about, based on research and data, we can see significant transformations in our social landscape in the next 10 and 50 years, and more importantly, be ready for the future so that we meet the needs early rather than before it's ready things that surprise us. So let's just share my personal experience and
Thank you, Isa. Thank you, all of you. I mean, I don't know whether you're feeling that sitting here. What I am amazed at is like all of my four panelists is these abilities of social care. They're not just looking forward, they're passionate about what they're doing, and they're doing that. They have a vision and they're doing everything they can get there, but in a very systematic and planned way. It's been an amazing 45 minutes that we've spent together. As all I can do by summarizing, because each one of you has brought in an amazing experience of what you're doing in your particular sectors, is that what I was hearing was almost everybody is looking at creating very clear strategic maps where you want to get to. Leadership is fully committed, and leadership is working together collectively. There's a major cultural shift, and it's not just you, it's certain people outside, people in your teams, people from the third sector. There is a shift. Social care policy is not a word which is seen as something which the government is going to set out a guidance on and require to comply with. It has become something people say there's a gap, and the government needs to come and help us. Policies that are agile, and they're continuously evolving based on needs. So I'm looking forward to this next conversation next year, because it's an entirely interesting time in social care policies forward, and I look forward to hearing more about how this all goes. Thank you so much for your outing. Please, I would request all of you to join me in thanking this amazing panel. The panelists have promised me that they will be here to take in, discuss with you what they've talked about. We don't have time for Q&A, our time is up, which has been being made very, very clear on the screen flashing red. So we definitely would be hanging around here, and very happy to have further conversations.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session and final for the day will be about recruitment and retention, revolutionary practice for the future social care workforce. We will begin shortly. أخيرا والآن نصل معكم إلى الجلسة الأخيرة لهذا اليوم بعنوان الاستقطاب والحفاظ على الكفاءات، ممارسات مبتكرة من أجل مستقبل القوي العاملة في الرعاية الاجتماعية. ونرحب معكم بالمتحدثين سعادة الدكتور حصة الكعبي المدير التنفيذي لقطاع المشاريع الخاصة والشركات في هيئة أبو ظبي للطفولة المبكرة، والبروفيسور لوري جولدفيلد من كلية الدراسات العليا للخدمات الاجتماعية بجامعة فوردهام في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، وأندريا أتريلي خبير فني لأسلوب العمل في مكتب مشروع منظمة العمل الدولية ILO من دولة قطر، وناتيا هالازي مؤسس وعضو مجلس إدارة الجمعية الجورجية للأخصائيين الاجتماعيين، ويدير الجلسة الإعلامية لبنى منصور مذيعة برنامج سكاي نيوز عربية.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last panel of the 2025 Social Care Forum. Is the best. I'm happy to have you all here, our audience. This is an important discussion on recruitment and retention, and in the social care sector specifically. I'm delighted to moderate this panel today. As we all know around the globe, the social care workforce is the backbone of our system. Yet we're facing a significant challenges in attracting, developing, and keeping skilled professionals, high turnover, growing service demands, and increasing complexity of care. It means we must rethink on how we recruit, support, and inspire those who deliver life-changing services every single day. Allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists for today's panel. Her Highness Dr. Hissa Al-Ka'bi, Acting Executive Director of Excellency, Dr. Hissa Al-Ka'bi, Acting Executive Director of the ECA, UAE, leading efforts to design and implement policies that support and grow the national social care workforce. Professor Lori Wolfkind, Professor at Fordham University, graduate School of Social Service, USA, specializing in the intersection of technology and care. Andrea Petrelli, Labor and Social Protection Economist with the International Labor Organization, working across the MENA region on employment policies, workforce upskilling, and social protection. Last but not least, Natia Parshkaladze, and I hope I pronounced it right, Associate Professor of Social Work at Iman Jashkevitz at Lacey State University of Georgia, founder and board member of the Georgian Association of Social Workers, Senior Technical Advisor of the Global Social Services Workforce Alliance. Each of our speakers brings profound insight into the most pressing questions that facing the social care workforce. Together, they will help us unpack 4 key shifts that can shape the future of recruitment and retention, from short-term staffing fixes to long-term workforce planning, from reactive retention measures to proactive workforce support and supportive workplace culture. From traditional recruitment models to innovative and also technology-enabled approaches. These themes will guide our deep dive today, helping us explore both global trends and practical solutions that can work together on the ground. In many countries, as we all know, social care vacancies remain unfilled for months, and turnover rates can be high. Without long-term planning, these gaps weaken service delivery and place additional strain on remaining staff. Workforce planning means anticipating and aligning trainings, the pipelines, and ensure we have the right people in the right roles for years to come. Let me start by asking you, Professor Andrea, actually, if you could tell us, please, what is the main reason causing this workforce gap in many countries, in many sectors actually, and perhaps other sectors, as I say, what does effective long-term planning in social care look like or should look like?
Great. I wasn't sure the microphone was working. So you got upgraded to Her Excellency, and I got upgraded to Professor. I'm not a professor, but I'm a proud economist. So we all got a notch up today. Anyway, let me get to the question. Yeah, exactly. Empowering the panelists. So thank you for the question. So yeah, let me give you an overview. So you ask why there are these labor shortages. That's how we call them in economist journal. And there are three main components that determine this happening. So the first one is that we have an aging demographic. So we know that worldwide that the amount of people that are, because of longevity issues, the amount of people that are reaching old age and older parts of aging is just increasing. And this is a reality in most OECD countries. We know the cases of Southern Europe. I'm from Italy. Italy is a very old country. Japan, and there are other economies that behave like that. This is not obviously an issue that is perceived a lot in the Gulf, because, or in the Arab states as a whole, because we know that here most countries are experiencing youth bulges, but social care services don't only deal with aging of population, they also deal with early childhood services. So long-term care is just part of it, and these services are still in need. So there's a demographic component. The second issue that causes the labor shortages are working conditions. So usually healthcare workers, anyway, social care workers experience low pay, irregular working hours, maybe a lot of working hours as well compared to other type of employment, and limited career progression. So where they are, they stay, and it's difficult for them to go from a higher level of, for instance, maybe a case manager from as a social worker. And then there's the third component, which is the training and the credentialing system. So basically, the training and the system of prior learning recognitions are always fragmented, usually. This is very true in the MENA region. And obviously, this limits, again, career prospects, career opportunities, and so forth. And people, therefore, rather go to different type of employment. So how do you fight that? First of all, you need evidence-based policymaking. Policymaking in the space of social care is always, I don't want to say always, that's too much, but it's often anecdotal. So it's not anchored in actual data, in actual evidence. At the ILO, we talk about evidence-based in the sense that any policy design needs to be anchored in solid data and solid research that comes before. And this is often in the Gulf and in the Arab states just an issue of data, non-available data, right? So you need to harvest this data in order to come up with the right policy. And then you need two other components that are very crucial to me. The first one is the integrated skills ecosystem. So you need to develop skills framework, and you need to understand what are the actual skills that are required for the workforce. And then you need to target those employees and those workers that have those skills, and even those that maybe with a little bit of training can reach that level of skill. Because we see that in care work, most of the workforce has actually needs intermediate skills, not very high-end and not very low. And so there's this discrepancy. And the third component, which is crucial to a UN agency like the International Labour Organization, is social dialogue. You need to align qualification requirements and this national qualification frameworks with all the stakeholders involved, meaning the workers, the employees, employees themselves, government, and all the other stakeholders like academia, NGOs, or associations.
Dr. Hassan Kabi, could you please tell us the current challenges? Let's talk about Abu Dhabi specifically. Social care workforce planning in care, and how is Abu Dhabi approaching long-term workforce planning in social care? What policy leaders are proving most effective in aligning workforce supply with future growth?
Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to tell the story of early childhood maternity. In 2019, when we were established, one of the key strategies we started working with is actually creating a human capital strategy. So we scanned the 4 key sectors related to early childhood development, early education and education. We looked at health and nutrition, we looked at child protection and family support. And through that scanning, that baseline, we sort of created a supply and demand model. And here it's an opportunity to thank all our stakeholders for supporting us with the needed data to have that provision. And once we knew the supply and demand element of these critical sectors, we created also a competency framework that has 27 elements related to knowledge, behavior, and skills. From that, we highlighted critical gaps, but the one I would love to focus on is actually having the lack of Arabic speakers, practitioners in the different sectors. And this gap is, I think it will be increasing because there is a reliance on the pool of Arabic speakers, practitioners from the Arabic world. And due to what's happening now in the Arabic world, that pool will shrink eventually. The conflict in these countries is not ensuring high quality education. So there is a need to focus internally and locally. And what we did is actually we looked at current graduates with the right qualifications who are unemployed, and we created upskilling programs for them to bridge universities with the workforce environment. And through that, we managed, with the support of our stakeholders, to increase the practitioners who speak Arabic. In 2003, we actually, with the direction of our visionary leadership, we created the National Academy of Childhood Development. And the aim of the National Academy of Childhood Development is to graduate practitioners who are Arabic speakers and experts in early childhood care. Next year they will have their 3rd cohort, and that will ensure we keep this pool up and running, and hopefully the number will increase. Having said that, the Academy is also working to upskill the current practitioners in the different fields. So through that, through the supply and demand, through the competency framework, we are hoping that localizing the solutions will not help us only in filling jobs, but it will also support having future-ready talent rooted to our values and unity.
And I'm sure most of our audience can relate that that's nothing new for Abu Dhabi or the UAE in general to be the number one in saving everything regarding the future in our language, the Arabic language. Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Nadia, from your advocacy perspective, what policy shifts are essential to ensure the profession remains attractive and sustainable over the next decade?
Thank you. This is a very important question. And even though the context is so very different in different countries, I still want to highlight one very important aspect which applies to all parts of the world. When we're talking about the social service workforce, we need to be clearer who we are talking about. Because social service workforce, according to the definition of the Global Social Service Workforce Alliance and other organizations using it, is comprised of the professional social workers as well as people who are career professionals in providing social services and volunteers. And unless we make this clear distinction about the diversity of this group, unless we make it clear that this workforce requires a certain number of well-qualified, academically qualified social workers who are either licensed or otherwise regulated in their field by their countries, it would be really difficult to be talking about common policies that would support recruitment and retention of this workforce. Because the motivations, the needs of this workforce, as well as their responsibilities are very different. And for all countries, we need to make sure that we have a pool of well-qualified, well-regulated social workers who are academically trained by the universities in our countries. And I know that we have very good programs here in UAE as well for producing social workers. And to make sure that we give them relevant opportunities in the field to do the job that they are trained for. There are a number of fields in our countries everywhere, including, for example, child protection, where we cannot be relying on paraprofessional workforce. And hence, when we sometimes say that mid-level trained professionals are often enough for the social service workforce, it doesn't apply in all situations, and it doesn't apply for all groups. So I think one of the important policy shifts for most of our countries is to have the legislation, often this could be the law on social work, the law on social services, which legislates and clearly mandates the responsibilities of different professional groups included under the social service workforce. And by doing that, we outline the mandate of these different groups. We are clearer with the competencies and training needs of these individuals, and then it will be also easier to come up with the supervision and support initiatives for these different groups. So being a professor of social work, I really feel very strongly about the need for professionalizing and regulating social work, and then aligning all other parts of this workforce, and that will be the most important policy shift in my opinion.
Let's dive into the responsive and practical CPD programs with you, Professor Lori. And here I would like to know from you, how can we design continuous professional development programs that are both practical for frontline workers and responsive to changing sector?
Thank you. And just to build on Dr. Nadia's remarks about segmenting who we're talking about when we're talking about a care workforce, I think one of the possibilities and potentials as we think about a future-facing workforce development arena is a pipeline where local underskilled workers can move into the profession. And so, for instance, here in Abu Dhabi, NYU has a program with one of the local agencies to pipeline in people who are under-credentialed into the profession of social work. And I know they recently, that cohort of this first cohort of students recently visited the United States, and they came to NYU, which is a really fantastic opportunity. I know that not every professional needs to go to the United States to become credentialed or to be sort of make that investment. But I think those kinds of pipeline programs offer real possibilities for individuals who may not have considered an undergraduate or even graduate degree at the start of their service in early childhood or in child protection, but offering those pathways to individuals who have already demonstrated interest and commitment to caring and social care, I think offers us a lot of opportunities. With regards to professional development, I think that, and we've heard this, it's nice that this panel follows the prior panel about the role of data and interoperability in the social care sector. The ability now to do text mining kinds of activities, matching and comparing across case records, offers us some insights on where worker development might happen. And so I don't mean this to say in a surveillance kind of way, but using the existing data that we have, even though it is generally messy and probably deserves an open data standard, using our existing data tools to surface trends and patterns around professional development needs. And so by that I mean having systems in place that allow us to surface where we are not serving clients well, and where there are professional development opportunities, and then matching those opportunities or service needs or needs for professional development with newer tools like automated enrollment. And so things where a professional, before we send them out into the field, we see this to some degree in social work education at the undergraduate and graduate level, where we're doing a lot of, in the academic world, it's called behavioral rehearsal. That is a fancy term for role playing. And students find it to be incredibly useful, junior professionals find it to be very useful, to before we are sending them out on a home visit, which is a high-stakes environment where they'll find themselves in the field, we are able to sort of offer them the possibility to understand what that might feel like. It is an AI, it is not a replica of a human situation, but it is a near enough experience where they can interrogate where they may not have grown up.
I think a very important part of our discussion is talking about peer learning and mentorship. And here I will give back to you, Dr. Insa, to ask about this part. How is Abu Dhabi embedding continuous learning into social care workforce systems to prepare for emerging service demands?
We know that children needs are evolving, and with that, I would say that also the word around children is evolving very fast, and that requires more practitioners to also learn and continuously. There's no other option. So how do we create this learning opportunity for all the practitioners across the social sector? And what we've done is through the supply and demand model and through the competency model, we built a survey to check with all the practitioners in the different sectors their current situation and what are they going through. To understand, we need to listen first and know where they are and what's their qualification and providing that competency framework helps to have the right standards across all the different sectors. And from there, we also decided to listen not just to the giver, but also to the receiver. So we built also surveys to listen to families who are benefiting from these services. And through that, you can see the gaps and what needs to be done. So we continue the learning through the tools we already created for the government, including the National Academy of Child Development as a trainer for practitioners in education and health and social care. From there was also continuous learning through guidelines provided by early childhood authority or our key stakeholders, the Department of Community Development. So where we try to provide the tools, we try to improve the environment, we try to provide the training, and that continuous learning is always happening. And there is also a learning system that shows us the operating system. And we introduced that parent-friendly labor for the private sector, so we can also keep in mind the private sector because it contributes and manages the development of the government arm.
Mr. Abia, particularly from your perspective, how can workforce development here policies ensure that the training systems are responsive to both employer needs and at the same time workers' career aspirations?
Yeah, if you go to any employer in the world, you would ask if they had difficulties in recruiting the right skills for the job. I think 99 times out of 100, you would get an answer that say, yes, we're struggling with getting the right job. So when it comes to trying to balance the workforce needs between what is the demand of employers and what is the supply. So again, from an economic perspective, again, we go back to social care. I truly believe, this is what the ILO stands for as a UN agency, that every training opportunity and every part of the aspects of professional development of careers in actually every sector, not only in the care sector, but even in the care sector, starts from social fabric. So from involving the stakeholders in the process of developing whether our trainings, curricula, education systems, and so forth. So one thing that I would like to And from what Professor Lori said is that there is definitely a pool of lower skill social care practitioners that could be uplifted, to skilling program or recognition of prior learning. And this is like a quick way and a quick win to make sure that training opportunities actually are matching with the current demand of employees. And so, therefore, if we go back to the skills needs and the skills component of this, integrating skills qualifications into the national skills framework that are being developed, involving all of the stakeholders that are part of the process, again, governments, employers, workers, associations, sectoral representation, can be a way to ensure that whatever happens in the sector then is reflected immediately in the training opportunities that are available to the people that are practitioners in this sector. And there are several ways to do it. Several tools available to policymakers. One specific one that is getting a lot of traction with all of is the establishment of sectoral skills councils. And these are, again, these commonly structured space for dialogue, for that social dialogue that allow representatives from the sector to actually tell the government what's going on in their sector and what is actually their struggling with. And this is one way of making sure that then the government knows, look, okay, we have this lack of this specific skills, therefore we can adopt a policy and we can invest in, technical education training system that will bridge this gap, that we can invest in an upskilling training for the current workforce, and then the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit, 100%. We'll stay here in this part of learning before we move to the retention. Professor Natia, from your experience leading a national professional association, what role can peer learning mentorship play in supporting the team?
It is a very important question. From my experience from the European Association of Social Workers, and also from the research evidence in the mapping of the workforce that the Social Service Workforce Alliance has conducted with every part of the country shows that people are very motivated. They are part of the team which is started by qualified individuals willing and able to mentor them and to support them with difficult situations. Belonging to the qualified team is one of the big motivations of the workforce representatives. It's found through the research as well. It is motivating not only for younger people who become part of those supportive teams, but also for the qualified professionals, because their skills, their knowledge is being recognized that way. They are able to share their experience and support their friends and colleagues through sharing their experience. And it also links to the importance of the supportive professional supervision system. Because one thing is informal care support and exchange, and the other, we should be there in healthy teams and organizations should be supporting that development. But another thing that should be there, and is not always developed in many systems, is supportive supervision mechanism, which is also kind of peer support and mentorship thing. In many cultures and in many countries, currently I work in the Asian countries where the word supervision is not understood in a very good context. It's often seen as an oversight with a little bit of a negative connotation. So when developing the guidance documents for that country, we've chosen, in consultation with the representatives of the government there, not to use the term supervision, and instead to use the term mentorship, which fits well in that culture, and it's also better understood as a supportive system. So clearly there is evidence from my country, from global research, that peer support, formal or informal, is one of the key motivators for younger employees as well as people who provide that kind of support. It should be encouraged by organizations, otherwise it's not the matter.
For sure, this is the most important. Retention problems actually often arise from workplace cultures. Issues like burnout, lack of recognition, or limited growth opportunities, and I'm sure many of our audience can relate. Also, this is a proactive, supportive environment is the key to keep here staff engaged and committed. For that, Dr. Hussam, could you please tell us what initiative have you seen that proactively supports staff well-being and motivation, and how can these embedded at a system?
I'd like to think about staff as a human being who wants to balance their role as an employee, but also their existence as an individual person and a member of the community and a family. And when we look at that in Abu Dhabi government, before the first one, there is, in the social sector, there is a clear career path for social workers. There is the support, well-being is embedded within most policies, specifically for placing customers' jobs and providing mental support for them also. And when we go and think about what else we are providing for them other than the career path, the training, the workplace support, we in the early childhood authority 2021, we established the parent-friendly label, which was launched for the private sector. And it sort of invites the private sector to adopt policies and also add facilities for mothers and parents within the working place, flexible working hours, maternity and paternity leaves, specifically for parents who have children of determination. And having that human need met, it usually motivates the task force. It encourages them to be part of that work and doing it with ease and comfort. And that's what we look for. It's actually behind the social work. We're not just focused on the services that deliver, but also with the people who are delivering the services. And that signals that Abu Dhabi is focusing on the task force to thrive, because when they thrive, the families are going to thrive and the community as a whole.
I like what you started with, like, we have to know that this employer is at the end of the day a human being, and there's another role in the society they can do. Professor Lori, let's talk about workforce policy and job satisfaction factors. How can technology here be used to monitor and improve? I'm sure you're worried about this sensitive question. Workplace cultures and staff well-being.
So I think that's a somewhat delicate question. There's a big conversation in the United States about employee surveillance. That actually is less common or less loud in the social care sector, in part because our technological infrastructure is so poor. And so the sector doesn't have the digital resources in order to do some of the surveillance strategies. But I guess I as a social work professor and a technologist, I have sort of a policy response rather than a technological response. I think there are many examples from a policy perspective about things and strategies we can employ to make workers' lives better that are not always monetary resources. And so in resource-constrained environments, often those are child welfare, early childhood, there are experiments with policy strategies like job sharing. And maybe I can bring the digital back in by saying that in part that those case sharing opportunities or job sharing opportunities need to be supported with digital infrastructure. And so if you have the data resources so that you have a robust system to describe what is happening with the family, then workers can move in and out of the case. There is a cultural component to that because often our workers feel very possessive over the families that they are serving. And I think it is on management and our supervisors to cultivate an environment and a culture where all of the staff is responsible for all of the families. And if there is data to support the communication about a particular family or a particular case, it becomes much easier to consider a job sharing paradigm. And so when I say that job sharing paradigm to my students in the States, they are not a fan. Maybe that's putting it mildly, because they do feel so much ownership over their cases, but I think there is a cultural shift we can make as leaders and managers to consider a more holistic approach, which also reduces the burnout of the worker. And so that's sort of both a digital strategy as well as a policy strategy. And Dr. Cotton talked about yesterday morning about sort of making work more flexible. And I think often industry is thinking so much further ahead than the social sector about what those flexible strategies might look like that have nothing to do with surveillance. And so we don't necessarily need to be surveilling our workers.
Professor, also, what global examples have you seen of innovative recruitment approaches that could be adapted to the social care sector, specifically in the community?
Yeah, so I want also to compliment first. I know I'm going a bit broad from this schedule here, but like as you know, as a representative of a human agency, I want to also say that one issue for retention generally is like recognition, right? And we know that globally, over almost a third of social care duties are performed by unrecognized or underpaid domestic workers, right? And so I know this is not off schedule, and I get to your question, but I just want to make sure that we stress that AI can definitely play a role, technological advancement can play a role, but if you use the analogy of a car, right? You say AI is this mechanism that prevents you from getting car accidents or changing lane, and that's very great, but it's useful. If you don't have a solid engine, the car won't go. So recognition is fundamental, and in this part of the world, there's so much to be done, but it's a global thing. That's a global issue. Let me get back to your question real quick. So on how do we remind me, it was about the
it's about
recruit, right?
Yeah,
the recruitment process. Yes. So there are for sure some examples that would be applicable to the Middle East context. The first one is, for instance, the apprenticeship. So the ILO does convention in a UN agency and does recommendation. Recommendation 208 is on apprenticeships. And apprenticeships are those, it's a system, it's a clever system that basically allows students and allows people that are approaching the labor market to develop skills ready and on-the-job training. So it has been implemented in several sectors, like in Switzerland, for instance. It's very much applicable, has been applied a lot on the banking sector and was very successful. In social care, it was applied in the UK, if I'm not mistaken, with some good placement outcomes. And this is something that, for instance, in the MENA could be replicated in the Arab states if there also is a cultural shift that apprenticeships, not only bachelor's, maybe master's program, can be a suitable way to develop the skills and new places in the labor. And one last way of recruiting is the economic partnerships agreements, EPAs. And these are basically a good alternative to ad hoc recruitment, and they're based on locally, so actually not locally, but like let's say recruiting foreign workers in their country of origin and training in their country of origin, certifying them so that once they then move in the country where they intended to arrive, and then they already have a set of skills and qualifications there. But this again goes back to the point of having national qualifications. Because in order to do that, you need to make sure that you know exactly what type of skills.
Let's move to the lens of Abu Dhabi. So how can recruitment here campaigns in Abu Dhabi strengthen the public perception of social care as a respected and desirable profession?
First of all, I would like to comment on what the professor was saying, that we need to have a master's program, and I would like to highlight that with the collaboration through the EU, actually introduced a master's program, of course, with childhood development as an elective course too, and we have scholarships for that covered by the government to increase that Professionalism supported with the Department of Community Development of Giving to create license and so field of privilege, prestigious job or career path. And that goes back to how can campaign eventually highlight the respect for job for the social worker. And what happens is if you ask any young Emirati to contribute to the first step is not to your knowledge, it's actually to the industry. And the social care career as a building nation career, as with a sense of pride, with a sense of leadership, because social workers are actually the corner backbone to a sustainable and resilient community. And we are actually what glue together our community. And it's the most human-centric career. And I've seen it in other countries, in Norway and the UK, through their campaigns, they managed to attract more men to the social care, and they managed to increase the applicant number through these campaigns. So I think it's doable, and I think it's time for us to do that.
Yes, that's right. We can do this. I want to ask you, Professor Natia, how can we make social care careers here appealing to young people entering the workforce? The young people when they are confused in this time. Anyone could answer as well. Let's start.
Thank you. We've talked about the recognition, and I think we should start with recognition here as well. Because most of the caregivers, the caregiving for decades and centuries has been done by informal caregivers, right? So that role is not always recognized. And social work is a new profession in most of the countries, in this region as well. And many people just don't know about its existence, and hence it is difficult for them to choose this profession. Hence, recognizing the role of informal caregivers, professional social workers, and other people who are representing the social service workers is one of the important strategies, and that should be happening at different levels. One would be the efforts at the national level, really discussing the role of social workers or caregivers, but also there should be work done at the community levels, because we know evidence shows very clearly that recruitments done at the community level and programs which intentionally draw young people from certain, especially underserved communities, to, let's say, social work programs are very successful, because those people are usually the ones who stay in their jobs longer and they are more willing to contribute to their own communities. So working at community levels, at the national level, increasing the recognition of social work, and also working on showing positive images of the social service workers representatives. I think is one of the key areas. I think in most of the as people taking away our children, and that's not the positive image that young people will want to So yes, that's one of the key strategies, but not the only one, of course.
Nadia went there before I did, so I was thinking the image of the baby stealers, and so, or the poverty police, which is a colloquialism for social work in the United States. And I think that in our country, in my country, social work is over 100 years old, and I think we have the same marketing problem, it sounds like, that we have for social work in the UAE, meaning that we need to have images and almost a public health perspective and strategy married with marketing strategies or frankly business strategies towards promoting the field and the profession, so that young people have a positive mental model of what this work could look like, because it is incredibly meaningful. I don't think we think in the field of social care that we're making high stakes decisions. I think we say that language, which comes from the tech sector, or things like the Defense Department, but I can't think of a more high-stakes decision than going into a family's home to try to evaluate their care of a child. And so, repositioning the field as an admirable set of activities that young people might want to do, and that's sort of maybe at a strategy level, but also at a very local level, sending people who are graduates and who are supervisors and leading teams into secondary schools so that young people, very young people before they are graduating, have some ideas and exposure to what social care and social work looks like. I think those terms are very ambiguous, and we know globally that there is an isolation and a depression and anxiety problem across young people, and one way to combat that is to connect them to each other and to connect them to other humans. And while I'm a technologist and I do think that technology can do amazing things, there is really no replacement as yet for having a fully human, empathic experience. And so that might knock out a few different levels of a problem. And I guess the other thing I was thinking in terms of strategy was how wonderful would it be if you took the 27 competencies in early childhood and did SEO optimization, search engine optimization, for those of you not in the tech world, where the first thing that you look for on Google is early childhood, based on the competency language that has been developed embedded. And that is sort of a mishmash of marketing and business and technology that could really serve our kids well, I think.
I have to say, because I end up with this question before I open the floor for any questions, if anyone would like to ask something. With a sentence from each one of you of my speakers, if you could change one global narrative about working in social care, what would it be? We can start.
Like the professor says first.
Yes.
So one thing that comes to mind is that I think we perceive generally, let's say, that whenever you speak to someone that's not involved in social care, social care is perceived as something exogenous from you, like something that is like doesn't apply to you. But in fact, I believe that we were all children, and we all needed nurturing and caring. Hopefully, we'll all grow old, and we will need nurturing and caring when we grow old. And we all have parents that are going to be old and caring and nurturing, right? So I think social care starts with one of us. We can actively do something about it, and it's something that will contribute to our daily existence.
So I just would like to say one thing, that the reason country exists is actually to build that social life. And the reason organization exists within any country is actually to look after the social life of the communities within the country. And once we forget why we exist, we divert from the objective we want to achieve. Every single organization is a social care giver by essence. And once they remember that, we don't need to fight and isolate the social sector. We will talk one language where economy and infrastructure and airlines and telecommunication are actually affecting and building our social and daily lives. And that's the change I'd like to see, and having one foundational, comprehensive strategy that keeps social life and families and children as a segment, they're servant, and we know how all of them contributing to the growth and thriving of families and children.
So I'd like to wish for our social care workers, social workers, paraprofessionals, those who are caring for others, to make friends with the technologists. And similarly, I'd like the technologists to reach across the aisle and make friends with the social caregivers. I think that will make for a much more robust digital infrastructure and ecosystem that could yield great dividends for our social care workers.
I of course agree with everything that what the colleagues have said, and in addition I would like to say that social service workforce and social work is often seen as something which can be done by anyone who has good heart, which is of course important, and we have to try to attract people to this profession who have good hearts and are altruistic. However, we have to remember that this is not enough. It's people with skills, there's people with competencies, support, and that's why professionalization and recognition of these roles as professional roles that we often trust our lives to is very important. Thank you.
Thank you all for this valuable and insightful messages, and the message is clear actually. Building a resilient, committed social care workforce requires foresight for attracting talents, and this is the most important what we are working toward. I will open the floor for a couple of minutes if anyone has a question to ask our speaker. If anyone would like to ask for English.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a social worker here in Dubai, right now. So I have an open question to everyone that is here in front of me and to ministries. Do you think that we should have a social work service accessible to families to find solutions for their needs, such as elderly, kids, elderly, a network hub, not a scattered private service, public on one side?
I want to make sure I understand your question. I think what you are asking is about the role of the public sector or government sector versus a private NGO sector. Is that right?
So what I would envision is that a social worker serving in a municipality perhaps or in a public entity that can give answers to the different questions that the families have. Instead, for instance, I have a child and I need to know which center would benefit him if he is in EST, or then I have my parents that are moving over to the UAE and I need to know which services does the city or the country offer. This is, I believe, the main work of a social worker is to give information to support the families in 360 degrees between private services and public.
So I think, so in the US context, there's an entire infrastructure around information and referral. From my perspective, I think that's a place where technology and digital strategies can really support workers in understanding the referral infrastructure and landscape. It changes so rapidly. Eligibility criteria changes so rapidly. And so rather than having large language models where ChatGPT is giving families referrals, there's another strategy called small language models. It's a technical, I won't go down the technical rabbit hole, but there are retrieval augmented generation models, where those models are fed by the materials that UAE has produced and vetted, and so a family can get, and a worker can get reliable information very, very quickly, without having to rely on their social network of informal knowledge. And I think there's a place both for the informal knowledge, right? When I go to the playground, I learn which services my young person's friends find most useful, and frankly, which services I should avoid because they didn't treat me fairly. That's sort of informal information. But I also think there are real opportunities for us to codify information in referral using the small language models that would make workers' lives so much easier. I hope I got your question.
If I may also add two words to that. I think when social work is a newly developed profession in certain countries, it has kind of top-down approach. We start by developing social work services at the top, maybe in bigger cities, and citizens are somehow expected to reach out and find out actively and proactively themselves. However, with the development of the system and with development of the profession, we have to aim to go farther, closer to our community members, and to be better and better in outreach to those individuals who are not knowledgeable enough, who are not proactive enough, and the system should aim to reach out to those who are usually most in need. And I think that really takes time, in addition to the political will, of course, which is usually the most important factor. But I think that with
with the right leadership and support, that would be the direction for social work and social service development system to develop in any country where it's a relatively new system.
Thank you so much. Time is up. Unfortunately, I have to end up this vital discussion. Thank you, our audience, for joining us and for your shared commitment as well. We can all work together to make quality care possible. Thank you so much again to all my speakers. Thank you so much أبو ظبي. شكر كثير كبير لأبو ظبي ولكل رعاية واهتمام بدولة الإمارات العربية.
على يومين الحوار المستمر والافكار الملهمه والمداخلات القيمه استطعنا ان نرسم معا ملامح مرحله جديده لمستقبل الرعايه الاجتماعيه. وختاما يسعدنا ان نستمع الان الى الكلمه الختاميه لسعاده حمد علي الطاهي وكيل تنميه المجتمع ابو ظبي فليتفضل مشكورا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وصلنا للنهاية، لكن إن شاء الله تكون بداية لتطوير أكبر من هذا المنتدى. يسعدني أن أرحب بكم في ختام النسخة الثانية من منتدى الرعاية الاجتماعية 2025 الذي عقد تحت شعار الجاهزية المستقبلية في الرعاية الاجتماعية، الإنسان والممارسة في السياسة. لقد جمع المنتدى نخبة من القادة والخبراء والممارسين من مختلف دول العالم لبحث آفاق تطوير السياسات والممارسات والمبادرات التي تعزز جودة الحياة وتضع الإنسان في قلب مسيرة التنمية. حضور كريم، ولقد كانت جلساتنا الحوارية فرصة ثرية لتبادل الرؤى حول مستقبل القطاع الاجتماعي، حيث أجمع المشاركون على أن الأسرة هي النواة الصلبة للمجتمع، وأن الاستثمار في تمكينها يبدأ من إعداد وتأهيل كوادر الرعاية الاجتماعية وصقل مهاراتهم بما يواكب تطلعات المستقبل. كما توقفنا كثيرا خلال الجلسات الحوارية على الدور المتنامي للتكنولوجيا والذكاء الاصطناعي والبيانات، إدراكا منا أن قيمة هذا التحول ليست في سرعته فقط، بل في قدرتنا على توجيهه وفق منظومة أخلاقية من السياسات والأدوات التي تحافظ على قيمنا وهويتنا. ومن هذا المنبر نؤكد أن مواصلة التعلم المستمر وتنمية المعارف وتطوير القدرات هو السبيل للإبداع والابتكار والضمان الحقيقي لنهضة القطاع الرعاية الاجتماعية. حضور الكرام، نفخر اليوم بما قدمه أبناؤنا من طلبة الجامعات خلال المنتدى ومشاركتهم من أبحاث ومشاريع نوعية وتثري مسيرة الرعاية الاجتماعية. إنهم قادة الغد الذين نعقد عليهم آمال المستقبل ونعتمد على طموحاتهم وأفكارهم لاستثمار مسيرة بناء هذا القطاع. وهذه هي رسالة المنتدى في الحقيقة، هو منصة للجميع، الخبراء وصانعي سياسات وطلبة وأكاديميين لتبادل الأفكار وصياغة الحلول وتحويل مخرجات الحوار إلى مبادرات واقعية تحقق أثرا مستداما يوسخ مكانة أبو ظبي كوجهة رائدة في مجال الرعاية الاجتماعية. وفي الختام لقد وضعت دائرة تنمية المجتمع وبالتعاون مع الشركاء الاستراتيجيين التزام مع مواصلة ارتقاء منظومة الرعاية الاجتماعية في أبو ظبي، والتي تضم أكثر من 800 مهنيين مرخص وأكثر من عشرات المنشآت الخاصة والغير ربحية. أتوجه بخالص الشكر والتقدير لكل من ساهم في إنجاح هذا المنتدى من منظمين ومتحدثين وخبراء وممثلين عن المؤسسات الحكومية والقطاع الخاص والقطاع الثالث والقطاع الأكاديمي الذين أثروا نقاشات بخبراتهم القيمة وأسهموا في صياغة مخرجات سيكون لها أثر ممتد يتجاوز حدود هذا اللقاء. كذلك نشكر الشريك الاستراتيجي شركة ديلويت التي بدأت معنا كذلك من بداية المؤتمر، وننتظركم في النسخة الثالثة من المنتدى لنتواصل معا نحو مسيرة أكثر تطويرا للقطاع الاجتماعي ترتكز على أن الإنسان هو محور التنمية. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
كل الشكر سعادة الوزير على هذه الكلمات. يسرنا أن ندعو معالي الدكتور منير الخيري وسعادة حمد التي تلبس على المسرح. والآن نود أن اسمحوا لنا بس نشيل الكرسي، في ناس نبي نقربهم شوية حين والآن نود أن نكرم فريق المتطوعين الذين كانوا جزءاً من نجاح هذا الحدث وخصوا وقتهم وجهودهم للتنظيم، فليتقدموا إلى المسرح يأخذون صورة جماعية. تفضلوا. مشكورين وبارك الله فيكم.
الذين ساهموا في رسائل المنتدى. رسائل المنتدى أكثر شمولا واستدامة. فليتفضلوا. في شكرا معاليك، شكرا سعادتك، مشكورين. اسمحوا لي آخر كلمة. وأخيرا شهدنا خلال اليومين هو انعكاس لرغبة صادقة في إحداث تغيير حقيقي في منظومة الرعاية الاجتماعية. إدارة تنمية المجتمع تؤكد التزامها بمواصلة هذه المسيرة والعمل مع كافة الشركاء لترجمة الأفكار إلى مبادرات واقعية تحدث الآثار الإيجابي المنشود في حياة الناس. هذا المنتدى ليس مجرد حدث بل هو وعد بالاستمرار يدا بيد من أجل توفير حياة كريمة لكل أفراد المجتمع. دمتم بخير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
They're learning as they're also today with the organization was much smoother.